Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however, wherever, whenever you're listening. This is the Root for Wisconsin show, episode 150. Holy shit, 150 episodes of this project that started in COVID. I never thought we'd get to this point. I'm really glad we did. So I do want to thank everyone who's listened, interacted with us on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, etc., for playing along and hanging out and talking sports and other dumb Wisconsin stuff. It's been a blast. Do want to thank all my co-hosts as well, including who we have tonight, Dylan Tritt, the newest member of the team. Dylan, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, and you're welcome. You're very welcome.
Do want to just real quick, I'd be remiss if we didn't do this, but do want to thank Justin and Ramsey, who are here since day one, who continue to be here in some capacity just about every single day, between our Facebook chats and just kind of keeping this whole thing going. Shauna, who has been a trooper since she came in, really since pretty much day one. Sean, who has been a ride or die, talk sports, and kind of was one of the first people to kind of get me started on this whole thing in the first place when we were growing up. And then you, Dylan, for coming in. So I do want to thank each and every one of you for joining along and doing this podcast that sometimes only gets 10 to 15 listens a week. That's more than that, but I kid. So yeah, it's been fun. It continues to be fun. So I do want to thank all of you who make it fun. And over the next 150 plus, I can't wait. It's gonna be exciting. We got some big stuff coming up. So do want to thank all of those who've participated and made 150 possible, and buckle up. The best is to come. Probably.
One way to find out.
All right. Before we get into the episode, do got to talk about our friends over at Raging Pro Wrestling. RPWProWrestling.com is where you can get tickets to events as well as look sharp in the Fox River Mall. Next show coming up, RPW Homecoming 2 from the Wapaka Expo Center. Not going to want to miss that one, including a main event of Chris Masters versus Ken Anderson, two former WWE superstars in the ring in Wapaka, Wisconsin. Should be an absolute slobber knocker, a blast. Really bummed we don't get to go to that one, but duty calls. But
That's
if
right.
you are available to go to that one, tickets are available. Look sharp in the Fox River Mall as well as rpwprowrestling.com and their social medias as well. With that, Dylan, we can get into our episode and we'll talk about what we had rooted for in the past week. And Dylan, what do you got for us?
You know, this is a tough one this week. Excuse me, because I'm not really sure. One, it kind of pees back on what on your noogie from last week, I believe.
Okay.
And two, I'm not sure if I should be rooting for it or also counting it as a noogie, and that's going to be the current absolute terror that Antonio Brown is on Twitter right now.
This was not a noogie of mine last week, so I'm really curious where you're going with this.
No, we talked about this last week. I know we talked about this.
We did when Justin joined the show. I remember distinctly talking about Antonio Brown versus DeMar Hamlin.
Yeah, well, he's expanded his horizons. He's kind of he's casting a wide net. Let's call it that way. He's picking a lot of fights. I'm not going to read anything off on the show here, but
actually,
feel free to head
for it.
Are you sure? I don't. There's a lot of it that probably shouldn't be read off on this show.
It is. I'm curious now myself, so I'm going to say go for it. If I tell you to stop, obviously we can stop it. I got a feeling my sensor is going to be pretty wide, so you go for it. I'm very curious where this is going.
Yeah. You know, he recently is going after Caitlin Clark.
That's a choice.
Yeah. I'll let those who want to go after and check out what he said to her go ahead. I'll keep that one not read out. But he's blocked. He's blocked by Caitlin Clark. Yeah, he's being kind of vocal on this on the lifetime ban the NBA just handed out to, I can't remember the player's name, but he's touching in on that. He's poking. He's shooting a lot of shots. Yeah.
I found the Caitlin Clark material, and yeah, that's probably the best one to avoid.
Yeah, that's why I didn't read that one off. Yeah, Jonte Porter, he's talking on that one. He's yeah, it's great. So I don't know whether I want to root for that or I want to give that a noogie. It's kind of like,
it's a car wreck. You can't look away.
Yeah.
I'll read two. I'll put this out there. I'll put two of these out into existence because these are relatively tame.
Yeah.
The first one that I think is really funny. So he had a haircut that made him look like a Lego. Like the flat top and then like a puff above it. And it like looks like a Lego head because you can put a hat on it. And he said, should I bring back the Lego? Hashtag CTESPN at Lego Group.
Yeah.
Which, that's pretty funny. The second one, just minutes later, there's a meme from a tweet that says, think about the guy who bowled a perfect game on 9/11. It's a picture of a guy who bowled a 300 game on September 11, 2001, which in and of itself, I mean, unless he was going in the morning, that is a move and a half to go bowling on that day. The whole nation's reeling. You don't know about food supplies and stuff like that. Gas pumps are shut down. And this guy says, fuck it, I'm going bowling.
Right.
And then to bowl a 300. But then Antonio Brown comes in with Sean McDermott's favorite sports moment of all time. Hashtag CTESPN.
Yeah. Yes, like I said, I'm not sure whether I want to root for that or give that a noogie, but I guess I'll put it this way: I'm not going to condone the behavior, yet I would enjoy seeing it continue.
There is a video he tweeted of somebody getting humped by a dolphin.
Yep, there is one of those. Yeah.
All right. That's a solid root for. I did not expect Antonio Brown to be getting a root for.
Well, I'm going to count that as both, I think, because okay. I don't know how to approach that morally. The dark humor in me loves it. The podcast host, not so much.
I mean, it is pretty funny.
Yeah,
as a dark humor.
Yeah. I'd encourage everyone to go check it out, at least. I mean, just dip your toe in a little bit. You might fall in the trap, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a lot going on there. My root for, I want to get into the USFL or the USL or whatever, UFL or whatever it's called now. I have not found a team worthy of getting into, but over the weekend, caught some UFL or USFL, whatever it's called. And I'm going to say I had a blast watching that.
Nice.
When you can accept that it's like not NFL level football, you can have a pretty good time watching that. So I got to say that. I also want to shout out the Green Bay Gamblers, who we went to a game for. Shout out to Josh and Megan for their combined bachelorette party over the weekend. We went to the Gambler game Saturday night, which was their home regular season finale. And the Gamblers took home, well, they actually lost that night in a shootout. But by virtue of playing in that game, they did have to play as a 3 seed in their playoffs, which then they did end up sweeping, or they did go 2 out of 3. took 2 out of 3 from the Chicago Steel, which then puts Green Bay into the second round of the playoffs for the first time. I'm trying to see if I can find for the first time since a while. I can't find the post here of how long it's been since they moved on to the second round of the USHL playoffs, but it has been some time. And they will return home, play Muskegon on April 23rd and 24th if necessary.
Very cool.
So congrats to them on advancing to round 2 of the USHL playoffs for the first time in quite some time. That's my root for, which leads us, we go from the positives to the negatives. And my noogie, I wanted to start with this because this actually ties into my other noogie last week. The dude, Greg Doyle? Yes, Greg Doyle from Indianapolis, who just a super weirdo. And I will say before this, I had a little bit of beef with the guy because he's kind of a weirdo about Horizon League stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
But super weirdo with the whole Caitlin Clark introductory press conference. If you haven't seen that, go to social media. In her introductory press conference, he hit her with the heart hands, which is a signature of something she does with her family after the game. And to Caitlin's credit, I mean, she handled it as well as you can while being awkward as hell or feeling creeped out. She said, "Yeah, I do that with my family." He says, "Start doing it to me and we'll get along just fine," which is not a sentence to say. Like, be professional. Don't be a creep. And I guess he also had something else in there as well. And I don't remember exactly what the second interaction was, but there was a second interaction he had with her that also was weird. And then even today, instead of just apologizing and staying off social media for, a couple days, let it pass and just, let the news cycle through, he doubles down and says in a tweet, "Today, in my uniquely oafish way, while welcoming at Caitlin Clark to Indy, I formed my hands into her signature heart. My comment afterward was clumsy and awkward. I sincerely apologize. Please know my heart, literally and figuratively, was well-intentioned. I will do better." And then wrote a column about it, which, again, is not the move. Like,
yeah, seems a little, I don't know the word I want to use here. Half-assed would be, I think, a great way to describe that. And also not well thought out.
No. And that's where it gets me. Like, if you write your column that you are being paid to go to write there, right? Like, that's your job. Do your job.
Mm-hmm.
And then turn the phone off for a day. Turn the phone off for 2 days, whatever. Not double down, make a self-deprecating post on social media. Well, I guess technically apologizing, but still, like, doubling down. I don't know. Like, the whole thing was,
I'm not impressed.
Was odd. So that is my noogie. Do you have
Yeah, I'll second that one. I did see that in a couple places, and props to Caitlin Clark for handling it the way she did. Unfortunately, I think there's going to be more of that to come her way.
Oh, there definitely is going to be more of that to come, and that it sucks.
I hope she's able to handle it as well as she did in that instance. But she's going to have all eyes on her. I think her jersey sold out immediately. I think I saw that within 24 hours. I think the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark jerseys sold out. So she's going to have all eyes on her. So I hope she can manage that.
Until this situation, my noogie was actually going to be Jonte Porter, the guy who got suspended for life by the NBA.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, we know of the people on this show, I'm probably the most pro gambling. Like, do your thing, do it responsibly. Don't be without, don't go outside your means. Don't ruin your life over betting on sports or anything for that matter. But you also have, like, this is exactly what these leagues and why this is such a hard hurdle to get over. And why the teams and why leagues don't want anything to do with it and why it's going to keep being a problem. Because you're sitting here gambling on your team, shaving yourself minutes where, you're sitting here like, oh, I'm only going to play so many minutes tonight, which I'd never even heard of this guy, so I can't imagine he made that big of an impact. But at the same time, like, when you're feeding injury news from within your team to bookmakers and stuff, like, come on.
And the fact that he bet a total of 60,000 and only won like 20,000 makes it even more funny.
It is funny. Like, it's comical of, like, this is the dude who's going to be the one to, like, ruin it for all these players and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also like, and also he's not even good at it. Like,
no.
It's just odd. And I'm not surprised. I'm surprised it actually took this long to have this happen. But come on, like, don't be a dumbass,
Yeah, there's ways you could get around getting caught. I'm sure he's not the first person to do this, and he's not.
That's not necessarily the route that I was going for either, but I'm not saying to not get caught.
Well, I'm not saying not get caught either. I'm just saying if you're going to do it, don't be a dumbass about it, like you said.
Sure. I guess
I'm sure there's more people that have done it, and there are going to be more people that will do it. And, I don't agree with it either. But people are going to be people. So if you're going to do it, don't get caught.
It's definitely going to keep happening. Like, this isn't the last time it's going to happen.
No.
But, like, first of all, don't be obvious about it. Like, that's step one. But it's just, like, don't be betting on basketball. Like, do whatever else you got to do. Betting on your own team, like, come on, man.
Yeah, not impressed. Not impressed.
No, and, like, you forever, like, you ruined yourself from the league. Like, you have people, like, this is something that, like, jobs after basketball aren't going to hire you over.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, moving on to our Wisconsin web story of the week. And I think we've talked about this in the past, but it never fails to amaze me that this is actually something that happens. And I have done this before. But, Dylan, it is that time of year where crowds are gathering to watch sturgeon spawning.
Mm-hmm.
Most notably in, like, the Shiocton area and New London, Shawano. Newcomers and veterans alike coming to watch the sturgeon spawn to get up close and personal with these massive fish that predate the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's just kind of looking at this news story here, courtesy WBAY. just talking about how many people come out and kind of the process of how they track them with, they call it a pit, but like the small chip they put in the fish and whatnot too. But oh, did you ever do that growing up or anything like that?
No, I've seen it from afar, but I've never went up and actually did it myself.
I mean, it is pretty fun. Like it is. You don't really realize how massive these fish are until you do something like that. Like it is kind of cool. And there's webcams out there dedicated to like having cameras set up in these streams.
Mm-hmm.
That have like live streams of them. So it is. I mean, it is a really cool like thing, and you really appreciate this. But it's one of those. This is one of those true only in Wisconsin type things. Well, people drive across multiple towns or cities to watch fish shoot eggs.
Right.
So that is our Wisconsin web story of the week. Only in Wisconsin, but also definitely go check it out because it's really cool. All right, Dylan, we move on back to the world of sports. Last week we talked a lot of wrestling and a lot of Coach Borseth. Do want to continue to appreciate Coach Borseth. Green Bay Phoenix women did land a transfer from Minocqua through the transfer portal who attended Lehigh last season. So she comes in and will be joining the team, I believe, with 3 years eligibility left. That's very exciting.
I just want to touch on that. I like the move. I also see this as a future move because I don't remember her name, but she's got a little sister who is a stud. Fantastic basketball player. So hopefully the older sister being there will lure the younger sister to GB as well.
That would be ideal. So we talked about that last week. Both actually the men and women landing a transfer portal splash. So do want to shout them out. On the guys' side, it was a Northern Iowa product who played at UNI last season. Cole Henry committing to Wisconsin or Green Bay. So do want to shout him out as well. From Oskaloosa, Iowa, and then by way of Northern Iowa. So welcome to Green Bay. So with that said, real quick, I guess I forgot to talk about this because this was actually something I kind of root for. The new rule that the NCAA put in place, kind of by force because of the court system, but where players can play immediately after transferring after their first, so in their second transfer, if they transfer a third time, that they still don't have to sit out a year.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big fan of that. I know that a lot of people are not. However, I came across a tweet last night that I did want to talk about. And it was saying, what's the point of watching college basketball, when it's basically become minor league basketball where everyone's on a 1-year contract?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a fair point, like on the surface. However, it made me really appreciate this decision more than I think the person intended it to. Because up to this point, these kids were basically, technically speaking, were on 1-year contracts anyway. They were on 1-year scholarships. In the U.S., you play 4 years. 99% of the time, even with the coaching change, unless the kid goes to go in the portal themselves, coaches and staffs would keep the team in place, regardless of a coaching change or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a relatively new kind of development going back to the players. But part of the reason why student athletes even a term goes back to colleges not wanting to pay injury settlements and pay workers' comp for injured athletes, and getting around that by making the whole student athlete thing, which if you want to go look more into that, you can. There's hundreds of documentaries and studies and news articles out there about it. But there's a couple very prominent cases where after an injury to a player, which would have been like a 1-year injury or 1.5-year injury, because they had already redshirted, the school pulled their scholarship. And then they couldn't go to college, and they ended up trying to sue later and never got to. But it didn't work, obviously, because of the structure of the NCAA and because of that rule.
Right.
But it is just kind of a, like I said, I think it's a very interesting power back to the players, or at least kind of evening the scale on that front.
Mm-hmm.
And in theory, there's nothing to stop a coach from jumping one to another school, so why should the players be punished for it?
Right.
And losing your eligibility. So I was a big fan of this decision by the NCAA. So one thing they finally kind of got right by force. But moving on from that, one thing we did not get to talk a whole lot about last week, which we'll just kind of glance over this week because it's not really quite their time yet for a lot of people. Milwaukee Brewers still in first place of the NL Central, playing at a pretty high level, 11-6 through their first 17. Off day today as we record. Have a 3-game set on the road with St. Louis starting tomorrow night. And coming off of their first series loss of the season, which they lost 2 out of 3 to San Diego, but did salvage the last game on a 1-0 shutout, first shutout of the season. Doing so currently without Christian Yelich, the team leader in home runs, who just got placed on the 10-day IL due to a back injury or back tightness. But once again, boys of summer, got to mention them, and just kind of the early start to the season that they're getting on and maintaining a lead in first place by currently half a game in the NL Central over the Cubs and Pirates.
Mm-hmm. I just want to ask one question about the Brewers. As a not a super big baseball guy, I'm just glancing over their schedule so far, looking at games they've played. They're putting up some decent numbers as far as offense is concerned. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that. Now, what does it tell you that they just finally got their first shutout?
So there's a couple pieces to that. And I'm glad you asked that. So as a fan looking at it, in the grand scheme of things, we're only 17 games in. So that's not a huge thing. I am happier the fact that they just got their first shutout versus having not been shut out yet. And that's been a concern for the Brewers the last 3-4 seasons now, is the pitching's been great, stellar, but the offense hasn't always kept up. And granted, we're 17 games in. We are just over 10% of the season in. There is a lot of baseball to be played. That said, having only taken about 10% to get, a shutout defensively, being where they are right now, having been pretty close. I mean, opening day, they start the season, Dylan, with a 3-1 win over the Mets, where the only hit in the ball game for the Mets was a home run. So the pitching has followed suit quite a bit. The fact that they have made it this far in, we're 3 weeks in the season now, or really 4 weeks in the season now, and have only lost one series, I take pretty highly. They've played some really good baseball teams already, including that Baltimore team over the weekend. They took 2 out of 3 from on the road, putting up 11 runs in 2 games. So offensively, I think, they're in a good spot. Going back to your question, talking about the defense, and only, they do have a couple games where they've only given up 1. They have a game where they've given up 2, here and there. I'm not really concerned about pitching yet. It is definitely something that I have my eye on as a potential concern, because I look at this rotation as is currently structured, and there's not really a consistent innings eater yet. And that can mean that the bullpen is going to have to do a lot of work. It's not like we already know Brandon Woodruff has basically shut down for the season. So it's not like you kind of have him coming down the pike of, a guy who can casually go out for 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
Right now on your rotation, you have one guy in Freddie Peralta who can do that on a regular basis. But also he's also very prone to having a few walks early, getting the pitch count up, and also being done after 4 or 5. 4 or 5 comparing to like 6 or 7 or even 5 to 6 is a big ask. Even 2 innings out of your bullpen extra every 5th day is a big ask.
Mm-hmm.
Now you throw in DL Hall, who they got in the Corbin Burns trade, who still trying to figure out as a starter, has kind of gotten rocked around a little bit, but has had some electric stuff at times. Not necessarily that consistent inning getter. You look at Colin Ray, who has been very consistent for the Brewers, has been a lot of fun to watch for the Brewers in his year and change that he's been here. But you also realize that prior to last season, and it's partially luck, it's partially, having been a minor league guy and injury and whatnot. But prior to last season, he hadn't had a win since the Obama era administration. In early 2016, prior to obviously the election of 2016. But so you're going back to a guy who hadn't had a win at the MLB level at that point in 7 years. You've got Joe Ross, who very well could be the offseason steal of the season for the Brewers, who has proven to pitch at a very high level already this season, who kind of in that same situation due to injury, due to the COVID season as well, where he did opt out, hadn't been on a minor or a major league mound prior to this season since 2021. And then you have Wade Miley, who came off injury list and has made 2 appearances for you already. But he's not like a 6-inning kind of guy usually either. He's like a 5. So you have to eat up a lot of innings with your bullpen. And to the Brewers' credit, where they are as an organization, they are very well positioned for that kind of season, where they can still be at a very high level successfully and can, have guys who have minor league options they can sit down to get fresh arms in the building without really putting them in peril. But when you look at where even the starting rotation was a year ago, where you had 3 all-star caliber aces, now you have technically 1 and a whole bunch of, I guess for lack of a better term, question marks. It's not the best place to be. There definitely could be worse, though. And there's arms in the minor leagues who have starting experience, who have played very well as starters. Like, the thing with DL Hall is they haven't really used him as a starter, like even coming up. He's done a little bit of both. He's been a bullpen guy. He's been a starter. But he never really carved out that niche role in the minors or at the major league level. Whereas at least for some of these guys who are at the minor league level in AAA and AA, they have been starters coming up since low A and now high A and AA and whatever. So there is a lot of positive to that there are arms kind of there if they need them. So it's a very long-winded question or answer.
That was, but it was useful. I appreciate it.
It gives, like I said, I'm in a spot where right now I'm not really worried about the defense or the pitching. I am most impressed with the fact that the team on a night in, night out basis is scoring runs at a pretty high clip. And when you look through a box score on any given day, any given game, you usually have 7 or 8 guys having at least 1 hit. And even as most recently as a year ago, 2 seasons ago, 2 seasons ago, they missed the playoffs. Last season, they win the division, but they kind of barely squeak in. That's been a concern of consistent offense. And again, 10% of the season in, a lot of baseball to be played. But a lot of, this isn't like a lot of, like, you're not getting like a lot of home runs that are uncharacteristic. You're getting a lot of contact and doubles from guys who consistently hit doubles at every level too. One more number I do want to throw out there. On the National League side of things, the Brewers have the second best run differential right now. Which, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're scoring more than what you've given up.
Mm-hmm.
The Brewers right now, 17 games in, are at plus 25. Now, why that's that's impressive. A, because it's early on, but B, even looking back to 2021 and the 2019 season, I remember those two very specifically. There were years where the Brewers didn't hit a positive run differential until September, late August. So yes, early on, still plenty of time to go, but being the second best in the National League and fifth best in baseball, I feel pretty confident about. I like to see that.
Oh yeah, me too.
So that is our Brewer talk for the week. Dylan, the Bucks are in the playoffs. They are going to be the 3 seed and have a very tough matchup for them coming up.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I had to go last week before we got to talk Bucks. What I was going to say was they are in complete control of their destiny here. Unfortunately, they've been dealing with some injuries. Lillard is still day-to-day. Giannis is already listed as out for the next game. So is AJ Green. But they had a game lead. They dropped 2 games to the Thunder and the Magic to close out the regular season, and now they're the 3 seed. And I really do think that the Bucks would have paired better against the 76ers at the 7 seed than they are going to against the Pacers at the 6 seed. I'm not, especially with Giannis being out for realistically 2 to 3 games here. I don't have a real warm and fuzzy feeling. It's hard to win. It's hard to win any games when your best player is out. That's kind of a given thing, but especially against a team that has had your number all year, and now you got to beat them 4 times in 7 games. Mm-hmm. It's going to be tough. I'm getting Miami Heat vibes from this all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So on the bright side, we do host the first 2 games. So hopefully home court is enough to squeak 1 out, hopefully 2. If we win these next 2 games, which it's only the 18th. The first game isn't until the 21st. So there is still time. It's going to give the team more time to heal. Damian Lillard might be back at that point.
I do want to go on record real quick. I know that the Bucks have already ruled him out, but according to ESPN, Giannis is still technically a game time decision.
Right. Now, yeah, there's that injury that Giannis got a few years ago where he should have been out for much longer than what he was. And he is a freak human being when it comes to his physicalness. He might pull it out. He might be back for game 3. I wouldn't expect him to be back any sooner than game 3. If he is, I'd be absolutely shocked. And to be honest, being a little more forward thinking, I don't want him back until he's fully good to go. Because I'd rather lose this playoff series than have him suffer a career-altering injury. Granted, I think that's a little over dramatic. I don't think we have to think that far down the road. I think the Bucks medical staff will make the right decision when it comes to his return, especially being that he basically is the franchise.
Mm-hmm. Especially given that he's locked up for quite some time too. Like, it's not like he's on a contract year and you're trying to maximize this season, which I shouldn't say it like that because you try to maximize every season. But you're not necessarily in a position where, you have a little bit of wiggle room. You would obviously rather try to win a championship every year.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it's interesting. Now, going into game 1 this Sunday, they are a home underdog by 1.5. If I'm betting on this game, which I personally am going to say I'm not a gambling advice person, play responsibly, whole shindig here, but this is tempting to me to have the Bucks sitting there at plus money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess technically not. According to a night at casino, they are still minus money, even being a 1.5 point dog. But, if you can get them between now and Sunday at plus money, being like the slightest underdog, that is tempting. That is tempting to me.
Yeah, I'm not much of a gambling expert either. I would agree, definitely tempting though. I'm not going to bet on it because I know if I do, it's going to go the other way. That's just how my luck is. But I think that could change based on Damian Lillard's status. Obviously, if he's out, I mean, that's a stupid bet. But if he's back, I still think they have a realistic chance to win Milwaukee.
Yeah, and am I even counting like the whole series? No, I'm talking strictly game 1.
Yeah, so am I. Yep.
Game 1 coming out the door, the whole world's kind of thinking against you. You've kind of got that, like you said, that feeling of Miami Heat vibes, a team that's kind of taking to the cleaners all season. That's a little, like I said, it's a little tempting if you can get that plus money. If Damian Lillard's playing, which we still don't really know technically yet. If he's out, there's no way in hell I'm touching it. But if he's in, that's tempting.
It is. It is.
Now, as for the whole series, I would agree. I would much rather be in that 2 seed, having to play Philadelphia. A better matchup for the Bucks, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Pacers are tough, no matter what. Like, they've always been tough for the Bucks, but this season specifically, that's just. I wouldn't be shocked with the first round exit. Am I hoping for it? No.
Yeah, I'm kind of at where you're at. It's kind of been. I'm just going to say it. It's been a disappointing season since the Doc Rivers hire.
It's been a cursed year. It's been a cursed year.
Yeah, I mean, you go from 30-13 to 19-33. So you hire Doc Rivers and you go 19-20 to finish your season. Just the fact that you're a 30-13 team at one point and you don't finish the season with 50 wins, it's frustrating. But at the end of the day, let's look at the positive side. You added an all-star player, which shakes up your roster. You have a massive coaching change 43 games into the season, and you still are a 3 seed. And you've been battling injuries for the last, 10 games. There's been some serious injury battles. So,
Well, it's been all season.
well, I'm just saying their finish. Their
Sure.
finish was very poor. I mean, they were 3-7 in the last 10 games.
Sure.
And you still end up with a 3 seed. Barely a 3 seed. You're a game out of the 2 seed. Well, a game and a half if you want the 2 seed, a game if you want to tie the 2 seed, but I digress. All things considered, do you want to look at it in that light? You can find the silver linings, but overall I do have a feeling of disappointment for how the season has finished.
It's hard not to, right? Like, I mean, you look at what this season could have been, should have been, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard not to have that. I mean, you trade for a franchise-altering player, and you kind of expect to be, in a position to be a number 1 seed, kind of be, what Boston did this year, where they are the NBA Finals runs through Boston right now.
Mm-hmm.
You expect to be in that position where you already had 2 all-star caliber players. You add a third. You expect to be in that spot. Now, Adrian Griffin may not have been it to start with. And truthfully, I think they were winning before him in spite of themselves. And, not because of him. And I don't think that either him nor the Doc Rivers timeline, like, I think this is exactly the team that it was going to be. Like, I don't think the coach mattered per se. But, yeah, I don't know. It's a cursed season. You kind of hope that over the next couple of weeks here, as a fan, that either they make a just kind of a fizzle out exit and just end it, or that they really figure something out. There's always that possibility too. I mean,
Yeah.
If you go back and you look back at the Root for Wisconsin tapes, how many times in the championship season did Ramsey and Justin and myself call for Bud to get fired in that playoff run, thinking the team was cooked? Multiple times before they won a championship, were we calling for Bud's job and that the team was cooked? And I think there's an episode called the Bucks noogie episode. And they went on to win a championship. So it's not the end of the world. There has been darker days, but I'd be feeling a lot better about the upcoming days if they had been a little brighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting playoffs. Looking down the line, let's hypothetically say the Bucks pull this off and you end up beating the Pacers, then you're matched up with the Knicks and the 76ers. No surprise there. I'm going to go out and say the Knicks are going to pull that one off, but that depends on Joel Embiid's health. I think he is a good enough player where he could carry the 76ers past the Knicks if everything falls into line. But I guess we'll see. I shouldn't even get ahead of myself. We got to get past the Pacers first. That's going to be the first hurdle. I'm not very confident. I'm hoping that they're going to be able to pull this off. But time will tell. Time will tell.
All right, Dylan, we are about to officially start the NBA playoffs. There's still a couple play-in games yet, but with that in mind, NBA Finals matchup, who do you got?
Oh, that's going to be tough. My heart says Milwaukee can make it out of the East. My brain says it's going to be Boston, best team in the league this year by a decent margin. Though the Bucks did just beat them without Giannis. So I do expect, if Giannis can get healthy, I do expect the Eastern Conference Finals to be Boston and Milwaukee. I think it's going to be a toss-up, but I do think Boston's going to come out of there. The West is going to be tough. Let's see here. I do expect the Thunder to beat whoever ends up being the 8th seed. I'm going to take the Mavericks over the Clippers. Luka, who should win. I don't want to say should win, but has a very strong argument to be the MVP this year. I think he's going to carry them past the Clippers. I think the Thunder are going to end up beating them to make it to the Western Conference Finals. I think the Timberwolves are going to beat the Suns. This Nuggets-Lakers matchup is going to be interesting. However, I do think the Lakers' biggest enemy is their head coach. So I think the Nuggets are going to pull that one off. I think the Nuggets are going to beat the Timberwolves. And I do think the Nuggets will beat the Thunder to get to the finals. So we're going to have a Boston-Denver matchup in the finals. Who do I think is going to win that one? I think it's going to be Jason Tatum's year finally. There's not much you can do against Jokic, but the other role players on the team you can shut down. And I think Boston they just got it together this year. I think Boston's going to win it. And I'll say it in 6 games.
Calling your shot. I like it. I am hard pressed, looking at the standings and what we expect these matchups to be. I am hard pressed for a team to consistently beat Boston in the East. I will say one thing. If Milwaukee can get past Indy, I think they match up very well against the Knicks or, whoever they would end up playing in round 2.
Yep.
That's a sneaky matchup that I think could be very exciting. If we're talking chalk here, Boston would be playing likely Cleveland.
Yep.
If all things go chalk. I think Cleveland's going to give Boston a run for their money. And I think a Bucks-Knicks matchup, I think would actually probably lean towards the Bucks if they get past Indy. Boston-Milwaukee. Milwaukee matches up very well against Boston. I mean, we've seen Milwaukee take Boston to the cleaners twice on national TV.
Mm-hmm.
So bad the first time that TNT took the game off the air for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So if Milwaukee can get there, I think they're in a position where I still would pick Boston, but I think that goes 7. And I think it's a very good series. Again, barring injury and health of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So prediction-wise, officially, I'm going to pick Boston. But that is a very good matchup. And for what it's worth, I do think if the Pacers end up beating Milwaukee, they also move on to the Eastern Conference Finals because I could see them getting past the Knicks as well.
Yeah, I think whichever team comes out of that 3-6 matchup between Milwaukee and Indiana, I think they match up very well against regardless who comes out of the Knicks 76ers matchup. So
sure,
I think I'm locking in Boston to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think whoever wins that 3-6 matchup is also going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. I do give Boston a slight edge there just because they have been the best team all year. But if Giannis can stay healthy, I don't see any reason why they couldn't win that series.
Sure.
But I'm not going to bank on his health. That's the only reason I'm picking Boston right now. If Milwaukee cruises past the Pacers somehow, and Giannis gets an extra, and let's just say this Knicks and the 76ers go to 7 games, right? That's a lot of extra time to rest for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think that's going to give them an edge over who wins that. And if Giannis can be healthy, if he's 100% healthy, good to go, I would reluctantly take Milwaukee to beat Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. Reluctantly.
Yeah. Now, so if I'm looking at the West, I think you said it. I think Oklahoma City gets past whoever they have at 8. Not really worried about that happening.
No.
Denver, LA is a great matchup. As much as I never want to bet against LeBron, I would probably pick Denver to win that.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people said last year that was the most competitive sweep that there ever has been. And I
would agree with that.
I feel like that might be in the same position to happen again this year. Would I be shocked if LA comes out of that? No. But am I going to pick it? Also, no.
Yep, I'm in the exact same spot with you.
I do agree. I think Dallas beats the Clippers. So that puts your semifinals at 1-5 and 2-3. I honestly expect Dallas to get past Oklahoma City. I don't believe in them yet. And I think Luka is a very young buck and has a lot to learn in the NBA yet. But the season he had this season, 33.9 a game, 9.2 boards, 9.8 assists, while splitting time with Kyrie Irving, who's kind of figured it out again. That is a damn good team.
Yeah. I did see a stat saying Luka this year averaged the most points per game in NBA history if you take out points scored on the free throw line.
That's an interesting stat. Obviously,
though I'm not sure if it might have been post merger, but
either way,
still,
I'm going to take an upset in that second round.
You're going to take
say
the Mavs,
that Dallas gets past OKC. Denver probably gets past Minnesota, although that's going to be a great series as well.
That's going to be a very tight series.
And then I'm going to pick Dallas to get past Denver.
Wow.
Because what I see happening is I see that the Denver Nuggets are going to be just ground into the powder, because I think the Lakers are going to take them to the brink.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a 4-game sweep, I just think they're going to mentally exhaust them. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if that happens,
mm-hmm.
and it's as competitive as I expect it to be, that's how I see that playing out. I see that very much going that route. Same thing with the Minnesota-Denver series. Minnesota is so athletic.
Yes, they are.
Even if Denver gets past them in 4 or 5, which again, I'm not expecting that to happen. I'd say that probably goes 5 or 6. That is also going to be a grinding 5, 6, 7 game series. By the time they get to Oklahoma City or Dallas, which in my prediction, I predicted Dallas. They are going to be up against it mentally so much where I think Dallas beats them, but I think Denver beats Oklahoma City if that's what ends up happening. But
That's a fair
my
take.
official prediction, I'm going to say Dallas Boston in an entertaining finals, and I think, like you said, I think Dallas gets it done, or excuse me, Boston gets it done. Give me Boston in 6 in that series.
And I hate taking Boston, for the record. I hate it. Now, I used to be a big Celtics fan back in the late 2000s with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo. Big Boston fan. But now I just can't stand them. Just can't stand them.
I'm going to throw a take out there, all sports across the board. So baseball, basketball, football. We don't really have a comparable hockey, but throw hockey culture as a whole into this conversation. Boston/New England is probably the most comparable all sports city to the Wisconsin market. In terms of blue collar fans who support their team to no end, are always there, are always very vocal. And even the Brewers probably have the least amount of history among all 6 teams in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I mean, when the Brewers have been good and at their highest, have always had very similar type teams and rosters to what Boston has succeeded with as well. They've always been, 1 or 2 superstars and a bunch of folksy heroes that only the people in that city remember.
Mm-hmm.
So very comparable, I think, as a whole, when you compare 2 sports cities, and the overlap, aside from the Celtics, because they're actually in the same conference as the Bucks, the overlap of those 2 cities where, like, if you're a Packers-Patriots fan, that we only got to see them in 1 Super Bowl, and that was before before Rodgers or Brady. That was the 96 Super Bowl. While disappointing, it made them very easy to root for as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a whole, like, Brewers and Red Sox fans have a lot in common. Packers, Patriots fans have a lot in common. And then the Boston Bucks rivalry makes it a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But also, again, 2 very similar franchises aside from title count.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, Dylan, only really 1 sport left to talk about in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one that we have been hammering on our social media pages and will continue to hammer on our social media pages in the upcoming week. And that is the NFL draft next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with the Green Bay Packers from Detroit. And a lot of conversation. By now, all of us have put a mock draft that we publicly put out there. I know you're not necessarily the draft expert, but I'm curious, as a Packer fan who I would go on record saying maybe paying attention more this offseason than in years past due to this role. What are your thoughts on this team right now as we go towards the draft?
I think they're poising themselves to make some moves. I expect them to be defensive heavy in the draft. Which, from my limited knowledge, they seem to typically are somewhat defensive heavy in drafts. I also expect them to go after some offensive linemen, be it guards or tackles. Granted, probably not as many as I took in my mock, but late, mid somewhere in the middle of the draft, I would think they're going to go after a running back. Though they just did sign, they re-signed rather AJ Dillon. I would still expect them to take one, maybe in that late 80s, mid 90s range, wherever they end up. I don't know what they're going to do for trades. I couldn't tell you. Who knows? That's going to be a draft day decision, I'm assuming. But yeah, I would hope they're not going to trade away their first round draft pick. I would like to see them get, some stud on defense. I'm personally a fan of Kool-Aid, mostly because of his name, but he'd be beneficial. You can always use better coverage, so I don't know. It's hard for me to predict because I haven't paid attention to their draft history. I don't know their patterns all that well, but I just hope we're in the top half of the league when the draft grades get out.
Sure.
My only hope is that they just don't shit their pants.
So I'm going to say, I think this is the most excited for a draft I have been in some time. And I feel like I say that a lot of years. But when I look at where this organization is as a whole,
mm-hmm.
and where they are salary-wise and kind of needs-wise, it is incredibly intriguing to me as to what possibilities, because for the first time in a long time, I really don't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could very much foresee offensive line in the first round.
Yeah.
I could very much foresee a defensive back in the first round. I could see them very well being in a position to move up and trade some draft capital.
Mm-hmm.
And move one of their, swap their first round pick and throw in one of their seconds and move up a bit. I could very much foresee them, moving down a couple picks in the first round and getting another second round pick or something to that effect, or a third round pick.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that could happen. As we sit a week away from the first round, I think they do go defensive back round 1. I think the home run get would probably be Cooper DeJean from Iowa if he's there. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a very promising second option as well. If for whatever reason, and he's not going to, just because of how the draft is set up, but if they did move up to get Quinion Mitchell at corner, I'd be very excited about that. Or if he fell to 25, which I don't foresee happening.
Mm-hmm.
But if they went up and got Quinion Mitchell at Toledo, that'd be exciting. Yeah, I mean, and if they go offensive line, I won't be disappointed. Like, I think there's a couple really good spots for them to go. There's a couple really good tackles who could be in that 22 to 25 range. A lot of hype right now on Graham Barton, who's played center and guard for Duke,
mm-hmm.
which kind of begs the question, I guess. I think it's going to ask about where the Packers think they are as the offensive line, because I think at that position, you're in a very unique spot as a franchise where you have 5 solid starters right now, and you can either build draft depth late and just run with what you have as your starting 5 and build your depth there, or you can go, when your first 5 picks as of right now are in the top 100 in the top 3 rounds, you could go get 1 or 2 instant starters and have what you have on the roster as your depth right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they go defense round 1. I could very much foresee going defense with your first 3 picks. Going
I agree.
safety corner, safety linebacker, whatever. A lot of mock drafts that I've seen have a potential to double up Cooper DeJean from Iowa and Tyler Nubin, the safety out of Minnesota, which would be a home run. I still maintain my draft crush as Cameron Kinchins out of Miami. I think he's a third or a late second or third round guy that very much could be a lot of fun. I would like to see a running back in the 3rd or 4th round, possibly even as high as that late 2nd round pick of the right guy sitting there.
Yeah, that would be an interesting pick for them.
Well, and here's why that makes sense to me. And I think I've said this before, but the contract A.J. Dillon's on is so minimal that if you cut him before the season starts and you go with Josh Jacobs, a draft pick rookie, and say you bring back you keep Emmanuel Wilson around, or you kind of bank on Patrick Taylor getting cut again, that's a very solid 1-2 punch depending on what back they would take with Josh Jacobs. You can get a second back late and actually just roll with 3 backs of Jacobs, Dillon, and whoever, if you want to go that route too. It's a very interesting. I mean, that's the whole thing. The Packers are an interesting spot there as well, where if you want to go get one, no one will be shocked. People will probably support it if you go about it the right way. But at the same time, there's not pressure to do so. Really, the only spots you have pressure to add are a rather high-end defensive back or 2. I would like to see a linebacker or 2 added in at a relatively high spot, and some offensive line at some point, 1 or 2 offensive linemen. I think if you come out of this draft right now with 11 picks, and let's just say you take all 11 for conversation's sake, which I don't think they will, but let's say you take all 11. If you come out with 2 offensive linemen, or probably 3 offensive linemen, 2 or 3 defensive backs, a running back, a defensive lineman, and a linebacker or 2, I think you're in a good spot.
Yeah.
I don't think they need a quarterback. I think, they may still take one. It's just what Green Bay tends to do when they're in this kind of a spot as a franchise. They'll take one late for a preseason arm. I think they don't need a tight end. They have 3 on the roster, if not 4 on the roster right now, who are very good. And Tyler Davis. So I guess 3 on the roster who are very good, and him. But he's a great special teamer. So I don't think you need to add anything there. I think for the first time in 5-6 years, you don't need to even have a conversation about wide receiver. Obviously they take one. This is a great receiver class, which is kind of a bummer. Because
if the right one's there, why not?
Yeah, if the right one's there, great. But I don't think you're trading up for it. I don't think you're necessarily, this isn't going to be the year for the Packers to take a first round receiver. I don't even think you're entertaining that notion unless
no.
one of these studs falls to 18 and you trade up. But yeah, it's an interesting spot for them, and I'm very excited about it.
There's a lot of different ways they can take it, and just reading this article on ESPN doesn't seem like Goots being all that clear about it. He's talking about what it's like to have so many picks at the top. He just says, it gives us flexibility. It allows us, whether it's just staying and picking, trading, moving around, maybe trading those picks for other players outside, veteran players, who knows? So.
And that's exactly what I was going to say is
he's considering all options.
You've got an opportunity for the first time in a long time to trade 2-3 picks for a veteran guy. I think if you're going that route, you're probably going at the linebacker offensive line spot, but you've got the wiggle room to do so. And if that doesn't excite you as a Packer fan, nothing will.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, that is Packer Talk. I'm going to say pay attention to our social media over the next week because we will have more. We'll probably have at least one more mock draft from at least a couple of us. I don't want to tease the whole gang, but if we got one again from everybody, that'd be pretty cool too. So just saying, guys, and Shauna, don't be shocked. And I think at some point we'll have content on draft night as well. So very exciting about that as well. All right, Dylan, with that, we move on to our Ticket Smarter, what we are rooting for in the upcoming week. And as mentioned, that is brought to you by Ticket Smarter. Tickets available for just about every event that's out there in the area. Use code ROOTS10, ROOTS number 10, for $10 off of every order. Our ticket of the week, Dylan. Just trying to see what we can do out there for this one. Lots of sellouts going on right about now, and that's very exciting. I went to Wisconsin Timber Rattlers over the weekend, playing host to the Cedar Rapids Colonels. Tickets available right now for as low as $9.13 through Ticket Smarter. So go to Ticket Smarter, tell them we sent you, code ROOTS10, and you'll be hanging out at Fox City Stadium watching the Timber Rattlers play. So, Dylan, any bar of the week for us?
Oh boy. I haven't been out in a little while. Been drinking beer at home. It's a lot more friendly on the wallet.
I am going to say, so this isn't a bar, but I do want to shout out the Resch Center. So as mentioned over the weekend, we did go to the Gamblers game for Megan and Josh's bachelorette party. We hung out in a suite, and they have drink packages and whatnot. And like an old fashioned, you buy a bottle, they sell you a bottle of old fashioned mix, a bottle of whiskey or brandy, whatever. We went with the whiskey option, and it is just a true blast. The Resch Center staff, great. Obviously very familiar with buying a beer or two in that building as well. So not a bar of the week, but shout out to the Resch Center hospitality staff, specifically the suite staff, the old-fashioned kit. So that is our bar of the week, and then we're just going to talk about what we are rooting for in the upcoming week. What do you got?
I have a couple. One, I'm going to be rooting for the Bucks, obviously. I would like to see them win win at least one of these ones at home without Giannis and get him back fully good to go and take the Pacers for dog walks for the rest of the games. Move on to round 2. Overarching theme, rooting for some good NBA playoffs. College basketball is done, obviously, so this is the last basketball I have for a little while. I have to hold it near and dear till the end of the season. And my last one, I'm still unsure on this one. I'm kind of hoping Antonio Brown continues his reign of terror.
It's a full circle moment.
It is. I'm hoping he continues. I just, it's good entertainment throughout my day. I like seeing, because you never know what he's going to do next. Who's he going to attack next? You know, he was after Joe Biden. He was after Caitlin Clark. Jonte Porter. He's just all over.
DeMar Hamlin.
DeMar Hamlin. Oh, yeah, of all people, DeMar Hamlin. Yeah, I just want to see him keep going off. It's entertaining.
All right. Well, I'm going to echo playoffs. So I'm going to add in playoff hockey, which I am not like a huge hockey fan. Like, I love my Washington Capitals, who are probably one of the hottest teams in the NHL right now, snuck into the playoffs. Playoff hockey starts this weekend. The NBA playoffs starting this weekend. We've got baseball on TV just about every night between the Brewers, the Tim Rattlers. It is a golden time of sports. And then you throw in the NFL draft a week from today.
Mm-hmm.
How exciting. Like, how can you not be excited to be a sports fan right now?
It's hard not to.
So that is my Root 4s. And with that, we close off episode 150. Again, thank you for everyone who's listened for 150 episodes, whether it's your first, your last, or just the next one. Do want to thank Justin, Ramsey, Dylan, Shauna, and everyone who's listened along, part of this journey. I'm Eric. That's Dylan. We're out. See ya.
See ya.